Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here. Another pod. What's going on in pop culture right now? Got a ton of great stuff to get into this week. Sex Education Season 4 on Netflix. The final season. Gotta get into that. So much to discuss. Of course, Gareth Edwards' new original sci-fi film, The Creator. I have a lot of thoughts on that. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar on Netflix, a new Wes Anderson 40-minute short film starring Benedict Cumberbatch. I have thoughts on that. New music from Jorja Smith, first album since 2018. I have thoughts on that. Kind of a surprise album, YG and Tyga, Compton United, Hit Me When You Leave the Club. I have thoughts on that. And lastly, The Boys, spin-off over on Amazon Prime Video, Gen V. Have thoughts on that. A lot of heavy hitters here. Very exciting. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below to find those. Get the pod any way you can. Just make sure you get it. Make sure you leave a YouTube comment. Send me a tweet. Let me know how you're feeling. And lastly, hit the link below for the Best of 2023 Spotify playlist for my favorite songs of the year, updated weekly. And let's get into it. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Tyga and YG's collab album, Hit Me When You Leave the Club, the playlist. If you told me a few years ago I was going to be talking about a collab album from YG and Tyga, of all people, and I would actually really love it, I would have told you was tripping, because this is like really fun. This is like a great album, honestly. This is like everything you want it to be, an album with YG and Tyga. And I know they teased this earlier in the summer. They've released some singles to this point, so it didn't completely come out of nowhere. But, and if we can look back a few years ago, they made a song together, Go Loco, off one of YG's album. Showed some chemistry there, so it's not completely out of nowhere. But I had kind of like lost hope in Tyga as an album artist quite a long time ago. And YG, unfortunately has been diminishing returns for the most part on the album front. I previously thought of him as an album artist, but then again, My Crazy Life, Still Brazy, those albums came out in the Obama administration. It's been a minute, and Tyga really pulled himself out of obscurity in 2018 with Taste, the best song he's ever made, 1.2 billion on Spotify. Honestly, one of the best songs of the 2010s, rap songs of the 2010s, I think. Amazing track. But Tyga's still not an album artist. He's a popular feature. He's out there. So I didn't really know what to expect going into this, given YG kind of on a cold streak and Tyga not being an album guy. But I honestly think Hit Me When You Leave the Club, it's a lot of fun, man. 14 songs, 38 minutes, just a bunch of bangers, I think we can kind of leave at the door any thoughts of the best stuff of YG, right? Like Still Brazy, there's some lyrical depth to that album, as people know. We're not getting that on this, but it's just party songs, which is fine, I think, because when you're doing it as high level as Tyga and YG are doing it on this album, it's just a lot of fun. You just got banger after banger for the most part, man. And I hadn't even really put this together, but Tyga and YG actually have a Compton connection. I think when we think of Compton rappers, I don't even know when I realized Tyga was from Compton. I don't really think of it that way. I think people think of him that way. I think of him as a West Coast artist, I guess, but I never really put that together. YG, of course, one of the signature Compton artists. So interesting to have that nonetheless. Going through this album, again, banger after banger. I think Rubber Band Man, really fun. I love the Bedrock reference from Tyga on this one. Brand New, also a banger. Actually, honestly, a really good verse from Lil Wayne. And they end it, I think, in really funny fashion with the Snoop Dogg, this motherfucker don't miss drop. Really funny. Thumpin'. I love the flow switch up towards the end of the song from both Tyga and YG. They both switch it up. It sounds great. Tyga's chorus, very catchy. I think in general, Tyga probably shines the most on this album in comparison to YG, just because Tyga carries a lot of the hooks, a lot of the chorus, and he's honestly proven himself to be pretty versatile in that department. So he can give you the catchiest part of the song sometimes, but honestly, he's having a lot of fun with the verses. And YG, to his credit as well, is able to match what Tyga's doing on this, even if Tyga perhaps is taking the lead. Like on songs like what is it? Time for That. Where Tyga does a bit of like a pop crossover, like sung flow. He has some Bay Area bass hits on that. Sounds great. YG though, getting into his melodic vibe a little bit, honestly, it doesn't sound that bad. It comes across pretty well. I think the chemistry, the two of them, for the most part, is really consistent on this. Get Me Lit, another really catchy Tyga chorus. I love the Pop Smoke reference. I'm a thought, get me lit. I'm a slut. Really funny. Um, it's just kind of like a playful flow from Tyga once again. I didn't need like the bedrock noise like as long as you get it on Get Me Lit's pretty grating. That's my big note there. But yeah, what else? Big one. YG's really good on this one in particular. Busta Rhymes sounds great. Perfect match on the song. I'm the Reason. Awesome flow from Tyga. West Coast Weekend, which is one of the singles from this with Blast. That's a summer bop for sure. Obviously, it's been a summer bop. It's been out already. Tyga and Blast have made a song together. Of course, Chosen with Ty Dolla $ign, another summer bop. So they kind of ran it back on this one. Sounds good. Party Time. This is a really fun flow from Tyga for sure. The BPM is definitely higher on this. I think it's just really fun lyrics. It's a really fun like rapid fire vibe type thing. Bochella. I'm kind of surprised YG hasn't made a song called Bochella before, but I think that one's really fun. Tyga honestly spazzes on that one for sure. Platinum. Man, this one's a banger. Really saving some of the best for last on this. This had been out as a single. This one's just super hard. The beat almost reminds you of like an organ, honestly, with the vibe. I think it sounds awesome. And then the last song, Fuck With You, FWU, love the strings on that, super up tempo. And again, Tyga kind of floats. Like this is probably the most excited I've been about like a big amount of Tyga verses and bars in a long ass time. I thought his like kind of quote comeback album Legendary was pretty solid, but this is like Tyga sounds like great, honest to be honest, and it's definitely a step in the right direction for YG, where he's kind of like I guess taking a step back, making some lower stakes music, following the lead in a certain sense from Tyga, but making some pretty good stuff. Like I've been a huge fan of YG for so long, and the fact that some of his albums have been big letdowns lately has been a big bummer to me because I'm such a huge fan of the highs of him as an artist, and I still have faith in him, moving forward. And this, I think, for something that was definitely unexpected, I think for all of us coming into the year anyway, before we started getting the smoke, seeing the smoke with the singles and stuff, hard to complain about this. But let me know, how did you feel about Tyga and YG's Hit Me When You Leave the Club? Was it as big a surprise to you as it was to me? What's your favorite song? And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Jorja Smith's second album, Falling or Flying. It's been a long time for Jorja Smith. We, of course, got an EP back in 2021, Be Right Back, but the debut album, Lost and Found, back in 2018. It's been a long time. It's been a long way for me because I was a gigantic fan of Lost and Found. That was in my top 10 albums of 2018. I was really kind of blown away by what Jorja Smith had to kind of bust onto the scene as, which was, I think, a really singular talent in the R&B space, and really standing out for, I think, her really dynamic, rich, unique vocal strength and talent, and just having a real ear for crafting amazing songs. A big fan of songs like Teenage Fantasy and Where Did I Go, and of course her breakthrough single Blue Lights. Really special artist. And she's taken her time. That Be Right Back EP, a bit of a holdover project. But of course I respect the long wait when it leads to something like Falling or Flying. I think this is a really awesome album from Jorja Smith. I'm very satisfied with it, and I think it's an awesome record. Big fan. I think what stands out to me most about Falling or Flying, and like kind of where it stands, and like the place for Jorja's career to this point, like this is an album where Jorja's trying a lot of different things, but it never really distracts, I think, from the strength of the whole album. It really speaks to, I think, her strength and also her, I think, sonic chemistry with the production duo behind most of the album, which would be Dame Dame, which is actually a duo that Jorja has known for quite a long time, funny enough. And, she's not really doing any trend chasing on this album at all, but still standing out due to her, I think just her natural talent. Standing out in R&B, in female R&B is, I think it's harder now than it was when Lost and Found came out. The R&B genre has really rebounded. There is a plethora of compelling and successful artists operating right now. In general, like, it's a very popular genre once again. SZA's doing arena tours after all. So Jorja is coming, I think, back into the fore. She's done some features here and there, but she's kind of really coming back into the swing of things when there's a lot going on in the space. But she just has, I think, a uniqueness to the way she sings, and I think the rich texture, just a very dynamic singing voice. And I listen to her sing about just about anything, just 'cause I think it's a really special voice. And Falling or Flying, like I said, the production really kind of hits that home for you, where these are just, I think, engaging song after engaging song. I mean, first track right off the bat, Try Me, those drums really hit you, but her voice just immediately striking. I just think it's a really great song. A lot of fun beat pops. I think it's like tambourines you hear. In general, I think the percussion throughout Falling or Flying, it's never like over the top, but it's always interesting. There's always something going on in the beat with the drums and whatever, whether it's cymbals, whether it's hi-hats, whatever it is, something's going on with the drums. It's always pretty interesting. Track 3, Little Things, the early tempo, when it's really just the beat before Jorja's vocals come in, almost kind of reminded me of like a show tuney vibe. Then it kind of picks back up and almost gets like really busy. It's like a lot of percussion, like these modest keys. Like, it's a very interesting beat. Feelings, that one stood out to me because it's a duet with J Hus. Of course, Jorja was just on the J Hus album earlier this year. Now Hus returning the favor on Jorja's record, and Jorja, she's good at duets. Listen to her songs with Burna Boy. We know this. This is a really good one. Actually, J Hus really impressed me with this. Kind of getting in his singing bag as someone who is a rapper and kind of Afrobeats artist first. He's like legitimately singing, but I guess you could say it's a bit of an Afrobeats song, at least a little bit. The title track, Falling or Flying, love the bass line on this one, but the chorus from Jorja in particular is very, I think, amazing. Like, really layered vocals from her sound really cool. Go Go Go, this is probably the most polarizing song on the album because it's got an acoustic guitar. It's almost like an indie pop song, I guess. I saw some people calling it pop punk. I don't really hear it as that, but it's indie / rock leading, at least in some way. It definitely stands out in the sense that it's not like anything else on the record, really anything else Jorja Smith has made to this point. I thought it sounded pretty good, but I understand if it's maybe not everyone's cup of tea. Greatest Gift, I thought the singing on that from Jorja was really nice. Same thing with Broken Is the Man, which I think also has these really nice like bass hits, like the way the bass hits as Jorja's singing, like it's a really nice match. Makes Sense, I really like the understated delivery from Jorja on this. She's an artist who, she never I think very rarely beats you over the head with her vocal strength or anything like that. She's not really that kind of artist, but this song Makes Sense. It's even more understated than she normally is as a singer. And again, I think that all that just kind of speaks to the dynamism that is like her vocal strength, where she doesn't need to belt shit out to really engage you with her voice. Makes Sense also stands out, really intentional, I assume, squeaking on the guitars, with the strumming. That stood out, as well as the drum tempo. Lately, I thought Jorja, again, really smashed it on the chorus with this one. Sounds awesome, really ear-grabbing type vocals. And again, like the beat, it's just right. Sounds awesome. And then the last track, What If My Heart Beats Faster, that was a really effective closer. So, in conclusion, shout out Jorja Smith, man. I think it's been a long time coming, obviously, but this really was a worth the wait type record for me. There's a lot to go back to on this, a lot of interesting moments, a lot of clear intention with the songcraft on this album. And obviously, I hope we don't have to wait quite as long next time. Jorja Smith, despite all this wait, she's only 25 years old, obviously, of course, blowing up as a teenager. But I hope this really propels her forward once again, and she can kind of lead the way with R&B because she's definitely one of my favorite artists in the space. But let me know, how did you feel about Falling or Flying? Was this album worth the wait for you like it was for me? What's your favorite song? And for more R&B reviews and music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, the new short film from Wes Anderson out on Netflix now, starring Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah, the second Wes film of the year, a short film, only 41 minutes, but I think a welcome surprise to get two things from Wes in a given year. Of course, Asteroid City came out back in June, reviewed that, liked it quite a bit, check the link below for that. Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, I thought it was pretty good. It's a short film, so it has, I think, smaller ambitions, obviously, but it also moves at a pretty brisk pace to make up for that. This is, of course, an adaptation of a Roald Dahl short story. Wes Anderson, a natural fit to adapt. Dahl, of course, already have done this in the past with the fantastic Mr. Fox to great effect. And this is, of course, on the heels of Netflix dropping a large bag for the rights to all the Roald Dahl stories. $686 million for those rights, and The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is actually the first of 4 shorts Wes Anderson is making adapting Dahl. And from what we understand, those other shorts are actually already filmed, so I'd imagine we'll be getting at least one of them next year. So pretty cool. But yeah, this is, I think, it's done, I think, with a lot of care, but also really interesting filmmaking, honestly. Cumberbatch, notably actually a newcomer to Wes Anderson. Obviously, Wes Anderson, famous for his ensemble cast, famous for working with the same set of actors over and over again, right? Cumberbatch is a great fit for what Anderson does great in this, but I just kind of assumed he had already been in a Wes Anderson movie at some point in time, but actually not the case until now. But we also encounter Ray Fiennes, Dev Patel, and Richard Adeoye, and I think it's a pretty brisk story. I was actually not familiar with the short coming into this, but the story of Henry Sugar, who is this rich man who learns the ability to see without his eyes, or just, learns the ability to basically see no matter what from a book, and uses it to pursue making money via gambling, basically finding a way to cheat, And the way I think the framing device with the storytelling is pretty wise and makes this feel like a pretty fully contained story, despite being a short film and only 41 minutes in length, where we have a series of narrators and we have a series of stories being told within the story. So we actually learn, get introduced to Henry Sugar with Ray Fiennes being a narrator, telling us some stuff about him. And we quickly encounter Henry Sugar finding a book, opening that book, and learning the story of Imran Khan, who was a Indian man from the past who had learned the ability to see without his eyes. And from there, we then get transported back in time and encounter Dev Patel's doctor character and Imran Khan, played by Ben Kingsley, of course, and we learn about how he was able to teach himself to see from a guru. And that story's all told. We even go back in the past with Khan telling us how he learned things, back into the present of that moment with Patel, his doctor character, learning some things. And all of this is under, the surface of Henry Sugar learning this history from a book. And, it kind of fits with the nesting doll, aesthetic that you expect from Wes Anderson, and the production of this film fits that as well. The sets, the staging of the movie is very theatrical, really meant to invoke a stage play, even more so than what you get in Asteroid City, which, was like a play within the movie, within the play, however that went. That was kind of big, oh, this is actually a play. But like the production of Henry Sugar, you have backdrops coming in and out. You have props moving in and out of frame. You have like stage hands taking things off the characters as they're speaking to the camera. it's very theatrical, and I think it really works to serve the story. Um, it's a lot of like single rooms primarily are all these takes, but I think that really works. And also the dialogue is just rapid fire. It's constant talking basically. And that, I think, obviously you got to keep up with it. It's a lot to process. I saw a review describe it as an audiobook on like 4 times speed. It's pretty apt description. You got to keep up, but I think the speed of that dialogue combined with, I think, the efficiency of the staging and the production makes it feel like a fully formed story. And I'm definitely curious to see how these other shorts go. I have no reason to expect them not to be good. But yeah, I thought everyone involved was great. Always nice to see Dev Patel. He's awesome. Yeah, and Kingsley kind of giving a fun, very dry, deadpan performance. He's good as well. But yeah, I would love to get more fully formed feature films from Wes as well. But he also seems to be someone who works very, very fast. He's always in production on the next thing while he's promoting the current thing. So I have no worries there. So I'm sure we'll be hearing from at least one of these shorts next year, and I'm sure we'll hear about the next feature film starting to sign on talent and whatnot next year as well, because that's just how Wes moves. But let me know, how did you feel about the wonderful story of Henry Sugar? Were you disappointed in its brevity? Did you feel like it kind of nailed everything despite the briefness like me? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Gen V, the new Amazon Prime Video spin-off series to The Boys, one of the most successful shows on Prime for sure. Of course, The Boys, a black comedy superhero series famous for, I think, lampooning the genre, being incredibly self-aware and I think reactive to our current society. And Gen V, I think much to everyone's pleasure, is effectively more of The Boys, just with a really kind of perfect high concept angle to it, where this is Soup's college. Superhero kids going to school. In this case, they're going to Godolphin University, or God U for short. Simply put, the Soups are going to school to fucking kill each other. Sounds just like The Boys. It's a perfect fit, perfect idea for a spin-off. Of course, The Boys is already a franchise that has had a few spin-offs thus far. They had the animated series Diabolical. There's now other comic books out. And yeah, while we're waiting for The Boys season 4, we believe that's coming next year. Of course, The Boys season 3 came out last year. I think Gen V, it doesn't feel like franchise pilfering to me. This actually feels like a really smart use of this franchise and this world, because I think the tone of the storytelling in The Boys is really just quite precise. Maybe this will not feel the case one day, but to me it still feels incredibly fresh. It is fun. All The Boys trademarks are here with Gen V. Notably, it's incredibly gory, incredibly sexual. It is dark. It's also very funny. But more than anything, I think the self-awareness that this story and this world brings about itself, and how we can put that on to how we see things in our real world, that's what makes, I think, The Boys just, I think, really rewarding to continue to be with in the world of superhero fatigue and superhero everything. So I thought Gen V, the premiere first 3 episodes out on Prime Video, 1 episode a week from here on out, that was really effective at hooking you. That first episode in particular was really special. I thought, our lead character we meet is Marie, played by Jess Sinclair, and I think it's a really effective, kind of opening set piece where we learn something that's kind of been teased with like X-Men storytelling in the past, where someone develops their superpowers unknowingly, just kind of randomly as it would happen, and tragedy ensues because the new superpowered person can't control their powers. We learn that Marie inadvertently developed her ability to control blood, bloodbend, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Basically, she can control blood after hitting puberty, basically, and inadvertently, almost instantly, killing both of her parents with this uncontrolled power. And really effective twist, as thus Marie is an orphan, but she's able to get into God U on a full ride and have a chance to kind of bust out. She's estranged from her sister following the death of their parents, so I'm sure that'll come up later in the season. We know that they are estranged at this time. But yeah, Marie then meets a bunch of other characters, both some that are her year, some that are a few years older at God U, and those include Andre, played by Chance Perdomo, who is a metal bender, but also the son of a famous superhero. We see his dad in the premiere as well. Marie's roommate is Emma, aka Little Cricket, someone who she's able to shrink down, very small. But we learn in the premiere that the way she does this is by purging herself. And then, of course, the way she gets back to full size is by eating. Obviously, that is kind of portrayed, perhaps obviously, about eating disorders. I don't know if that's the most richly developed, metaphor for our society. I think obviously all the reference points in the boys' world and Gen V, everything works to varying degrees. But I think the fact that you can recognize what it's talking about is not the only thing the series is pointing out. Probably, I think, lends some credence to the fact that it's okay if some things are just kind of obvious metaphors and that's all there are. Like, I don't know if there's any extra depth to be found here. I think what was probably more compelling thus far with Gen V was how this school at God U is set up, where all the students are ranked by like the board and by vault and whatnot. They're ranked based on their abilities, but also their marketability, their virality, their social media scores, their Q ratings, things of that nature. And thus, all the new kids coming to God U, all these new soups, are incredibly conscious of their brand awareness and their brand building and the desire for followers and views. And it's, again, obvious and perhaps heavy-handed, but also pretty compelling portrayal of the social media world we live in, where engagement is everything. And, Emma certainly is the brunt of this in a negative way in the premiere for sure. And Marie, someone who didn't grow up with much, came to God U without a phone. She has to learn how to play the game when she quickly becomes a star pupil after saving someone out in public. And then, of course, following a major confrontation at the end of the first episode. That major confrontation, of course, is with Golden Boy, the number one ranked student at God U, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger. And Golden Boy basically goes on a bit of a rampage, killing their professor, played by Clancy Brown, and then killing himself at the end. Like, I think the literally explosive end to the first episode really, I think, nails home why this is an effective pilot and why it feels like right at home in the boys' world. Because, of course, we learn, approaching episode 1, approaching episode 2, that Golden Boy had basically discovered a larger conspiracy happening at God U with Vault involvement, kind of dubbed the Woods, this kind of like secret lab/prison for superheroes. And Golden Boy's brother, Sam, is trapped down there. He had previously been told he had been killed. So Golden Boy is trying to get to the bottom of things, and thus this wider conspiracy and the desire to fix things is thus laid upon Marie and the rest of their crew, which includes Andre, includes Emma, also includes Kate, which was Golden Boy's girlfriend, and she is like a mind empath. She can touch someone and get them to do whatever she wants. We also get introduced to someone else in the squad, which is Jordan, which I think is also a pretty. I think this one's probably more compelling than the Emma front, but it's again kind of an obvious metaphor. Jordan is a gender shifter. I think they use the phrase bi-gender in this one, where Jordan can switch between looking feminine and looking male, and thus is played by two different actors as a result. Again, pretty obvious nod to non-binary people and things of that nature. But I was pretty compelled because I think both performances are done pretty well, and the desire to be oneself and the pressures other people put on you in terms of how you present yourself. I thought that was all pretty compelling, and again, fitting in the larger story that Gen V was telling us through this premiere. I think just thematically and plot-wise, in terms of this uncovering this greater conspiracy, I'm definitely in. I think there's a lot of meat on this bone, and again, I think it's just kind of hats off to the world building of the boys' world that everything just feels so rich and feels right at home. Like, again, I love the tone, I love the humor. Episode 1 has an absolutely hilarious and amazing sex scene between Emma and someone else she meets at school. That's a high bar to clear, given the boys season 3 gave us Herogasm after all. But I think this is definitely up there, right at home with the boys. Really, really funny. Really loved it. It's also pretty creative, I have to say. We get some cameos from other people from the main boys series, such as the Deep, such as a few others. We know Soldier Boy, Jensen Ackles' character, is supposed to be on the show at some point. We'll see how big of a role that is. I love the laugh. It's just a straight up gag in the show, but the RA for Marie and Emma's floor is completely invisible, and he basically introduces them. Hey, there's a consent seminar coming up, and while he's saying that, someone else calls out that he just has his dick out because he's completely naked because he's invisible, and yeah, that's just played for laughs. But again, it kind of speaks to the tone that boys wants to and Gen V wants to carry itself with. I think I just have a lot of time for all the like brand management stuff. It's also funny, obviously Marie and everyone else who's like thought of highly by Vought and by the university, consistently surrounded by handlers and people giving them scripts and messaging and things of that nature. And again, familiar stuff from how Stargirl went through her time with the Seven, obviously, but it's all pretty effective. I'm hoping the college stuff remains. I would love to see like the equivalent of a Gen V frat party at God U. I'd love to see that because I think college stuff is just a natural setting for fun humor, and having college kids be super powered just kind of adds to the possibilities, in my opinion. So as much as I'm definitely invested in the greater conspiracy that our core cast will be seeking to uncover and expose and free Golden Boy's brother, etc., I do hope that Gen V still keeps it grounded on God U campus, and we get some fun hijinks there. So that's what I'm hoping to see. We'll see how the last 5 episodes go. But let me know, how did you feel about Gen V? Do you feel like it's a really effective and compelling spin-off to The Boys the way I do? What was your favorite part about the premiere? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Sex Education Season 4, the 4th and final season of the Netflix series. It's been 2 years since Season 3, and now we're back to the UK, back to Moordale. One last go-round with, I think, one of the bigger surprise hits in, the last few years. The show debuting in 2019 kind of out of nowhere, having a standout ensemble cast. A lot of people in this cast are going to be around a very long time, and just came a really solid hit. And of course, this is a series that had to end. I'm happy it ended with Season 4 just because, again, most of this cast is pretty big now, and I feel like they didn't really have time to make this show anymore. And the whole conceit, of course, of high school kids exploring themselves and their sexual identities and their sexual proclivities and things of that nature, that's not a show that can run forever, right? There's a natural endpoint to these things. So it makes sense that the show has ended. But I've been a huge fan of the series to this point. I was definitely anticipating Season 4. And I have to say, Season 4, the final 8 episodes, I liked it for sure. I was broadly satisfied. I will say this felt like a bit of an overstuffed season. I thought Season 3 was definitely a return to form. And after, a dynamite Season 1 and a bit of a meandering Season 2. Season 4, I think I have below Season 1 and 3, but above 2 on my first gut thought there, solid. And I think it wraps things up pretty well and makes some interesting decisions, but I did have a feeling that the ensemble had just kind of grown a bit large at this point, and there were certain storylines that just didn't feel like they had the oxygen they deserved, and whole characters, as a result, really not getting as much time as they needed. On the other hand, the stuff you are really invested in, which I think is really the core ensemble, the core trio, if you will, of Otis, Maeve, and Eric, we've been invested watching them. So anything involving them, I was pretty into. Some of the other supporting characters, though, I was less interested in this time around. But overall, I think you have a big change with season 4, where we're no longer at whatever the high school that we spent so much time in the first 3 seasons. They've all moved on, and now they're at the sixth form. Cavendish College, it's called. It's kind of like junior college we would think of here in the States. And meanwhile, Maeve is of course going to study in America, having left for that at the end of season 3. So we're in a different setting. We're in different circumstances. As a result, some characters are no longer on the series. Convenient way to write people off. But honestly, most of the cast is at Cavendish, which I thought was pretty amusing, pretty contrived, of course, but it's TV. It is what it is. It's fine. And I think, I guess the core conflict to the plot of season 4 is probably the kind of unexpected rivalry between Otis and this character named O at Cavendish, who was already at the college and had already established a very successful and popular therapist counseling service, much like Otis, of course, had made his name on in the first 3 seasons. So there's natural butting heads there, and a rivalry quickly ensues. That was pretty amusing. All like the class politics, school politics, vote for Otis stuff. That was great. I loved all that stuff because it really felt like kind of the core of Sex Education season 1, core Sex Education, which was the in the school adolescent experience. Loved that stuff. And as a result, this college, I think amusingly, is very progressive, very forward thinking. It's student driven. As a result, everyone is happy to be themselves there. You see all kinds of walks of life, all kinds of identities, orientations, etc., present at Cavendish, and it's a positive place for sure. And I think my one issue with that was that it's kind of easy to see some of the new storylines that are being introduced with some of these new characters. A lot of these characters become close with Eric. Eric actually making some like real long-standing queer friends, at college. Something Otis couldn't really give him, of course, because Otis doesn't have that experience. And this actually comes up, I think, pretty intelligently later in the show. I think the issue with those characters, which I liked, I thought the performances were fun. These characters aren't given enough time to be much more beyond the identity aspect of what they are. Like one of these characters is hard of hearing and is kind of constantly reminding everyone that you should make sure she can see your lips, so she can read your lips. And she gives a speech later on. Like there's not a lot to her character beyond reminding you not to be ableist, basically, which is all fine and good. It's just the character itself is quite archetypical. You have this other character who is post-op trans character, and they aren't like able to do much of anything in the series beyond be there for Cal from season 3, who's going through their own gender dysphoria issues at the moment. These characters aren't given, I think, a lot to do beyond push other plots forward. So I had a hard time, like I just kind of like noticed that, and it kind of stood out to me, like Viv goes to college, right? And she meets up with his boyfriend, and the boyfriend seems nice, but eventually becomes an example of like a controlling relationship, and whatnot, and a form of domestic abuse in a certain sense. And again, good storyline. It feels like it fits within the ethos of Sex Education, but I feel like some of the side plots with season 4 just felt like they're kind of like trying to check boxes. Like, hey, this is something that fits in our theme, our thesis of this show. We haven't like covered this yet. Let's get it in now for the final season. I feel like they're kind of checking some boxes. I don't know. Nothing egregious, but just I felt some of the supporting characters were just kind of means to an end. So that's that. I think even Cal, like Cal's character is kind of sidelined and not really there, not having a whole lot to do until the very end when Cal's insecurities and lack of self-worth and confusion comes to a head in a really serious manner. It's like a lot of means to an end type stuff, unfortunately. I think the best stuff this season for sure, probably Eric. Honestly, it's a great Eric season. Eric goes through quite the journey. Shuti Gatwa, really tremendous performance. Quite the journey for him as an actor as well. Obviously, he'll be the new Doctor Who very soon. Quite the accomplishment, obviously. I think everything Eric goes to, particularly with faith, and coming to grips with being happy and proud of who he is, and he has been like that as a character for some time, but not being afraid to hide who he is within the church, which might not be as accepting of that. Pretty good. I thought the only thing I kind of got hung up on with that was the Joey Turner Smith being like a manifestation of God, like a vision, basically, to Eric. I don't remember if we saw like kind of like pseudo realist, science fiction type stuff, fantastical stuff in previous seasons. I really don't remember. I guess maybe we have, but it kind of like stood out to me as being like, wait, this is not usually our tone. What's up with this? But overall, the Eric journey and Eric's relationship with Otis, as Eric and Otis take some time apart towards the end of the season before eventually reconciling. Obviously, they would reconcile. It's TV, but I think it's pretty intelligent. I think general, the character of O, played by Thadia Graham, really liked her presence on the series, both as the rival to Otis, some fun beats where she ends up teaming up with Otis's mom, Jean, of course, Gillian Anderson, because, Jean is doing a radio program and O is hired to kind of be the second chair, and they play off each other and actually have pretty good chemistry. Like that kind of extra wrinkle I enjoyed. Then having Ruby have a past with O in a negative sense and not liking each other, especially Rube from the Ruby side. Ruby getting invested in Otis's campaign as a way to get revenge against O. Again, I loved all that kind of plot stuff. But Thadia Graham, maybe it's just her Irish accent. I don't know. I thought she was really, really fun to be with. Ruby, Ruby obviously had an amazing season 3 as a character. Mimi Keane really shining. She has less to do in season 4. Ultimately, I think the character gets a fun resolution just because I think it's kind of clear to everyone who watches it that like Otis never treated the character. Otis never treated Ruby well. That would be kind of dumb if they ended up together. So it sucks to watch season 4 Otis again fumble the bag and like just treat Ruby poorly and be a selfish person and not see what he has right in front of him. Probably for the best they didn't end up together. So I mean, as much as y'all would have liked more Ruby, and just because I really like the Mimi Keane performance, she's very effervescent, very striking in her presence. But I think that kind of worked out for the best. It's really fun when like Ruby's like in her bag, trying to play politics at school. Again, reminiscent of the early days of her character in season 1. And yeah, I think if anything, Otis has felt like less and less of a central force to the series, especially as the core conceit of the sex education, the anonymous counseling in the bathroom stall of season 1, as that has gone far to the rear view and this has become a larger ensemble show. It's really the characters interacting with Otis that we're more interested and invested in than Otis himself. Characters like Eric, characters like Ruby, and of course characters like Maeve. Maeve, though, in season 4, large parts of season 4, is like season 2, kind of separated from the rest of the ensemble. I really would have loved if she had more time to be with the ensemble. That being said, I think the funeral episode towards the end of the season is really strong. Really nice to see the old teachers come back in that moment. The emotional beats, though, that the Maeve character goes through leading up to that funeral scene, I think is really strong. Again, the Emma Mackey performance is, I think, full of a lot of depth, honestly, and that's why she immediately stood out as the breakthrough in season 1 alongside Ncuti Gatwa. Like, I think Emma Mackey's just a really, really talented actor. And obviously, her and Otis, the will they, won't they that we've been with for 4 seasons now, that was going to be resolved one way or another. in season 4. And I'm not necessarily surprised that they don't end up together in the finale. People were saying it, a few seasons back, but we kind of got the normal people, Connell and Marianne type vibe with this one. And in turn, she does decide to go back to America. And they both are a bit mature enough to realize they can't make it work with distance, so they just shouldn't try. And on one hand, it's not the rom-com, feel-good fairy tale ending that maybe would have been fun and would have felt like a culmination of things people have been excited about. It does feel like a bit of a earned ending or realistic ending, I suppose you could say. Tough beat for Otis as a character to not end up with Maeve nor Ruby, though, I have to say. Really, no one ends up with much of anyone if you think about the core ensemble, which is interesting. But apart from Amy and Isaac, which I actually thought was done with a lot of warmth, and Amy Lou Wood is, I think, and again, one of the underrated aspects of the ensemble. The Isaac character actually had a fun way to stick around in season 4. I wasn't sure how that would go. But yeah, I mean, I think the lesson with season 4 for me is, I think I would have liked more time with the core group. I think a character like Adam, right? Adam has had quite the 360, however you want to say it, the journey that character's been on, as well as the whole family, right? Adam's dad as well. I was never super invested with the reboot of that character. I wouldn't have minded that character to not be around anymore post Adam and Eric's relationship. So, Adam going through his journey and finding his confidence again, at least a little bit, and his family reconciling. Yeah, it's kind of the predictable way that was going to go. There wasn't really a whole lot more to it because we didn't have enough time because we're servicing so many storylines. I wouldn't have minded if we didn't have any of that at all. But this show was kind of committed to Adam and Connor Swindell's performance as Adam kind of the whole time. So I'm not surprised. Similarly, Jackson. Jackson has been a character that has been less central to interacting with our core trio as the seasons have gone on. And, season 3, Jackson and Cal actually was a pretty solid, use of giving Jackson something to do, but kind of faded away with season 4. And again, like some plot points that we hadn't got before that feel like Sex Education was kind of checking some boxes. Like, oh, Jackson has a lump on his nut. Better check that out. It's important to do that kind of thing, figure out what's going on. Of course, nothing was wrong with Jackson. He's okay. Jackson, not actually adopted, but you should talk to your adopted parents if you want to about these kind of things. There's really not a whole lot more to it. He's a good friend of Viv, right, in the season. That's kind of it. It's like, I like Jackson a lot in the early seasons, but there's not a lot going on with him this season either, and like spending decent chunks of scenes with these subplots that don't really have any room or oxygen to go any further than where they end up going. It doesn't ruin the season for me or anything, but I think would have liked more time with kind of the core group. I would have loved more Ruby scenes. And I think that's because I love the Ruby character individually, but Ruby is also really central to interacting with Maeve and Otis. Heck, if anything, I guess more Adam scenes would have been good if Adam was going to go back in the direction of interacting with Eric again. Anything. I mean, I would like more Amy stuff, Amy and Isaac stuff, because Amy and Isaac are in the Maeve orbit. I think we just kind of ballooned a little bit too much with this ensemble, which is okay. I think these are all fun performers, and it's been a fun journey. So it's kind of a natural, sin to happen with constructing a series. It's gonna go that way. Obviously, this is something that probably would have continued to get worse and worse if the show kept going, and the show probably would have not felt like it had anywhere left to go. So like I said, I think it's important that it ended where it did. I'm trying to think of other moments that I liked. I took so many notes watching this series. Just kind of notes here. The O music video I thought was really amusing. In general, like everything with like this school, which is obviously like pretty fantastical. Like I don't know of any junior colleges that are organized or not necessarily organized at all like that. But fun to be with for TV setting for sure. Hannah Gadsby basically cameoing as the radio boss of Gene at the station. Again, doesn't have a whole lot to do, but a very funny cold open in episode 5 where she puts olive oil down there to funny effect. I think when the show is kind of doing basic body humor stuff, it's at its best. Think about the very opening of season 1, right, where Otis struggles to take a nude of himself, and his lack of confidence to even send the nude back to Maeve, completely, reciprocating such a thing, obviously completely putting a wrench into their distance relationship. Really fucked up way to go. I was really annoyed to see him go that way. But then, of course, this being played for complete laughs later on in, I believe, the same episode where Otis airplays his phone screen out in front of the whole school, and they see his nudes, and we learn that he was taking flaccid penis nudes, and also hadn't shaved his pubes in a succinct manner. That kind of body humor stuff remains just really funny shit. And obviously there's a long list of stuff that Sex Education throughout the run has done like that. That was quite enjoyable. I guess Jean's sister, I forget her name, coming in, being a bull in a china shop, and then Jean's character and her kind of reconciling, going through some things. I think it was okay. Her sister was obviously very annoying, very tough to be with, which can grate on you a little bit. I wouldn't have minded less of that. But, they're kind of committed to Jean and Gillian Anderson's performance. Like, they're going to have Jean, so they had to find some way to have her in the show. And I actually enjoyed Jean and the radio station and the sister and how all that kind of worked. I actually kind of liked that more than, the pregnancy stuff from season 3, which I felt kind of spun its wheels for the episodes on end before she finally gave birth at the end of the season. I guess the who is the real dad stuff is not really built up as much of a thing to be concerned about, even if that was kind of cliffhangery in season 3, not really a big deal. Ultimately, I'd say I'm pretty satisfied with how it went. I wasn't like a hardcore shipper or anything, so I didn't like demand that Otis or Maeve or Ruby or whoever end up with anyone. Like, it's okay, it's all good. And I think it's a pretty satisfying show. And again, I think it'll be remembered as a show that came out of nowhere and really went beyond people's expectations. And of course, now is the birthplace of many young actors will be with a long time. Obviously, Shruti Gatwa with Doctor Who. Emma Mackey, of course, was already in Barbie. She was in Death on the Nile. She was a finalist for Lois Lane in the upcoming Superman movie. We'll be hearing from her a long time. Connor Swindell's on the SAS Rogue Heroes series. Amy Lou Wood had a BAFTA for Sex Education earlier season. Gillian Anderson. Mimi Keene doesn't have a whole lot on her plate yet, but I'm sure she'll be around. So I think we'll look back on this show in the years to come as just the launching pad for so many talented young actors, young British actors. So yeah, shout out Sex Education. I don't want to say happy to see it go because I like the show so much, but I'm not sad to see it go either because I think it's the right time. It's good that they decided to end it how they did, go out on their own terms, and yeah, pretty satisfied with it. So let me know, how did you feel about Sex Education season 4? Did you find it satisfying? How'd you feel about the finale? Are you okay with Otis and Maeve not being together? What are your thoughts on that? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Creator, the new science fiction film from Gareth Edwards, out now in theaters. I love this movie. I thought this movie was so impressive. I'm so happy we have it here. It's so good for so many reasons. There's so many things to applaud about it. So I love The Creator. I'm going to spoil it. I just got to say, this is the type of movie that you ask for all the time. This is an original science fiction film, big blockbuster movie, looks absolutely gorgeous, incredibly compelling set pieces, amazing production design, great acting talent, impeccable direction, so much to get into. It's really everything we asked for from original films. So I was quite blown away with The Creator. There are some faults, which I'll get into, but those faults do not sully my appreciation for the movie. I really loved it. So The Creator is Gareth Edwards' first movie since Rogue One came out back in 2016. And of course, as we know, Rogue One was kind of taken away from Gareth, Tony Gilroy coming in to, quote, save the movie. since then, of course, Tony Gilroy has gotten his flowers, deservedly so, with Andor coming out last year, the writing bag established for anyone who was doubting. And now Gareth is able to reestablish for anyone who forgot why he's been so celebrated, and that is his sense of scale as a big budget blockbuster filmmaker. With 2014's Godzilla, Rogue One, and now The Creator, Gareth Edwards is on a very short list in terms of what he can achieve at scale on film. It's very impressive. The set pieces are so big. And more than anything with Gareth Edwards, I think what's increasingly perhaps the most impressive thing about The Creator is what went into the production of this movie. This film has a production budget of only $80 million, yet it looks like a movie that costs $300 million. They had a very tactical production that was able to include tons of on-location shooting and very, very little green screen work. So you actually got more of what you traditionally want. And hearing Gareth talk about this is a great /film article going into how this movie got made, where the crew was kept very small and they were able to travel to over 80 on-location locations in lieu of spending, $200,000 every time they have to build a set. So they're able to have so much more variety in the production with this in mind. Also, there were some efficiencies they did with their camera and lighting rigs and things of that nature. Very interesting, but frankly, just to keep it a buck, like, this movie looks absolutely gorgeous. One of the best looking blockbusters we've got in years and years and years. The fact that this only cost $80 million should put a lot of people on notice in Hollywood. There are movies that cost 3 times as much as this and look half as good. Straight up. Ideally, in the perfect world, The Creator, whether you like it or you just appreciate the craft behind it, The Creator should be held up as an example of how Hollywood should move forward. We can move beyond the bloated productions that don't even look that great. We've got a bunch of them this year. And get back to saving on the big movies, yet still making them look good, such as The Creator, and perhaps spending that money on other types of films as well. All that's probably a bit pie in the sky, but hey, I think this is at least a proof of concept of how to go about big budget filmmaking in a different way. So whether you like The Creator or not, I think this aspect of it is completely undeniable, and we can hope that the right lessons are taken from this movie moving forward. So what is The Creator even about? I think for starters, I thought the trailer was incredibly fantastic. 2014 Godzilla also had a great trailer, and frankly, some of the Rogue One trailers were awesome. Some of those Rogue One trailers people hold up as the best versions of Rogue One because there's tons of scenes in there we never saw in the movie, right? Creator, 3 for 3, for the big Gareth movies with trailers. But The Creator is about a future where humanity is at war with artificial intelligence. Incredibly prescient topic given the times we are in with AI. It's obvious, but still effective to me. And, in this war, we have a lot of futuristic technology, but also I think, kind of societally speaking with the story here, AI and those friendly to it have largely migrated to the East, to New Asia, as it's called in the movie, and the anti-AI combatants are largely the West, led by America. Who else? And it's just kind of this all-out conflict where the West wants to exterminate AI, and AI wants to survive. And the inciting incident that happened before the movie's events begin involved a nuclear bomb being dropped on Los Angeles, the AI blamed for such attack. And now you have, in response to that, this large looming kind of like sub-atmosphere gargantuan ship in the sky called the Nomad, kind of appearing in the skyline like the angel of death, basically. And this gigantic ship is able to basically orbitally bombard select locations and is helping turn the tide in the favor of the humans. And the AI sympathizers are kind of moving around as guerrillas in multiple locations. And that's kind of the state of things. And our lead character, Joshua, is played by John David Washington, someone who was previously undercover with the AI side, got attached to his mark, Maya, played by Gemma Chan, and things go wrong. Joshua loses an arm, and he's basically out of the mix. And he gets recruited by basically two high up U.S. generals, played by Ralph Ineson and Allison Janney. Janney is very effective as a unsavory military leader, and Joshua was basically compelled back into doing some kind of black ops work for the West because perhaps Maya, his erstwhile wife, is still alive. And, he's told that if he helps go after this AI weapon that's rumored to be able to turn the tide back in the favor of the AI side, hopefully he'll be able to find his wife and extract her. And that's kind of the setup here. And what's learned, it's revealed in the trailer, of course, is that this weapon, this AI weapon, created by a Nimrata, this kind of mystical leader of the AI cause, very intelligent person. They've been hunting him for years. Joshua was previously trying to hunt him down, discover his location, etc. Nimrata has invented this weapon. We learn that this weapon is, in fact, a young child. Not just any child, though, but a synthesoid child. Of course, in the world of the creator, we have humans, we have AI robots, and then we have synths, somewhere in between, where they're basically AI robotic people with grafted on human characteristics, personalities, faces, etc., somewhere in between. And this young child, played by Madeline Voiles, who I thought was actually really good, and I believe her first acting role, this child is in fact the weapon. And I think where the faults of the creator come into play is that there's a lot of, I think, overt tropes in the storytelling, things you recognize in sci-fi story. One of those, of course, would be this very part, which is that you have the magical child, right? Child as the weapon. You have an adult man with his young female child companion. Like these are beats people know, right? Almost a little young wolf and cub, right? Shout out the Mandalorian. Like these are recognizable story beats, and I think as the story progresses, Joshua's allegiances, as he grows more attached to the child named Alfie, again, where all that progresses is pretty predictable. The portrayal of the West, to me, yes, we've seen it done this way before, but frankly, I thought it was done in a really effective way, where this is a movie that manages to convince you, the viewer, to sympathize with the AI cause, which is AI wants us to survive and continue to exist in harmony with humanity. It's a very positive, optimistic outlook, and the way the movie ends is of a similar vein. But to me, I found that really effective because it's basically grounded in the villainy of the West. And, I think, again, there's some obvious parallels, but if you want me to sympathize with the robots, one way to do it is to just call back obvious homages to the Vietnam War. That's what this movie does. You have, again, Nomad, the big death ship in the sky, very reminiscent of course, Western drone strikes in the Middle East, just dropping bombs all over, right? Because this movie was filmed all throughout Asia, a lot of filming done in Thailand, the Vietnam era callbacks in general visually are there. Like you get some Apocalypse Now vibes for sure, but also the fact that, of course, one side of this conflict are literally guerrillas hiding in the jungle, hiding on riverboats. Like again, like the Platoon Apocalypse Now stuff is really in there. Of course, as is homages to Blade Runner and Akira, things of that nature. Things are familiar, but I was down with the AI cause in this story, and I think, when the other side is basically doing the Pillar of Dawn from Gears of War with these ominous blue tracking lasers preceding bombs being dropped from the heavens, and of course you're interspersing that with shots of local villagers whether they're human or AI or synths, whatever it is, right? To me, it was effective. To some people, maybe it's a bit too obvious, a bit too overt, or at least heavy-handed. Frankly, I didn't care. I think a big part of the willingness to let some of the overtness of the storytelling go is because of that production design, because of that scope of the filmmaking, right? Like, production design, frankly, is incredible. The cinematography, it was kind of like a two-handed job here. You have Greg Fraser, of course, one of the legendary DPs at this point, then Oren Sofer, and they kind of split the work given how this movie was filmed. And man, it just looks like $1 million. I think a big part of that is you're filming in cinematic locations throughout Asia in general, but man, like, I think just the approach to filming in locations first and then grafting your visual effects onto it afterwards just make it look so good. The VFX is fantastic. The costume design is great. When they're doing hardcore Blade Runner homage in some of the urban settings, it's hitting. It's working. I just had so much, I think, to give to the movie in terms of like letting certain things go, just because I was so wowed by the production, the spectacle of everything. And again, because it's Gareth Edwards, when you do have your action set pieces, they are big, they are engaging. Of course, they look amazing, as the rest of the movie does. I think there's a really compelling scene where you have these bombs from the Americans, but they're actually they're like ground bombs, basically like huge grenades, and they're actually like little robots. They run towards their target, then they explode. Really compelling visual for sure. I think just in general, everything with Nomad as like a evil scion, this death ship, really effective. We go to places like Nepal later on as we go throughout the locations. Like there's some things that make you feel bad. I think again, some people might say it's overt or heavy-handed, but watching white people accost women and children and villagers over in Asia, again, the parallels are pretty clear. I think if there's one criticism that I think is probably a little bit more layered here, would be the phrase techno-orientalism, which is, I guess, a relatively new thing, where it's a storytelling trope where the future is robotic and the people that are with the robots are always the Asians. It's like I say, a new form of Orientalism in storytelling. I think there's some truth to that in this movie. I think the creator at least is portraying basically every Asian in the movie as a good guy. I think that certainly helps. Early on, I was worried that this might feel a little Orientalist in general, just because all the bad guys, quote unquote, with the AI were Asian, but in fact, it flipped, it was the other way. Ken Watanabe plays a synth. It's not, and I think the character development with this movie, like the characters overall are a bit stocky, but the performances are all great. Like Ken Watanabe, he's just really compelling. He has screen presence. We know this about him, right? Allison Janney, she's doing Patton, but she's really good as an evil Patton. John David Washington, I'm on the record as a fan of his. I loved him in Tenet, especially. I think this is not John David Washington's like best work, but it's a great use of his talents. Man, he is a compelling leading man to me. He's capable in action for sure. Gemma Chan, I think she's underused for sure as Maya. Perhaps a surprise on the acting side of things, apart from the child performance, would be Sturgill Simpson as Drew. Sturgill Simpson, obviously the country/rock artist who sometimes acts, and in this case, he plays an old friend of Joshua as a former military contact. The scenes that he has kind of in the act 2 of the movie, I think do the most anyway of communicating like some humanity, some nuance to some of the characters. If we had spent some more time with some of that stuff, it probably would have felt more effective overall. In general, the movie's quite fast paced. There's a lot going on with it, but I mean, to me, the movie was such a visual feast and so epic and so large scale that I was letting a lot of that stuff go. I think the ending set piece is probably the least successful of them all, but to me, it was still an effective set piece for sure. And yeah, I mean, I just can't help but like really just appreciate like again the craft and the care put into this movie, and I really hope it marks the start of a new approach with big movies, because again, this is what we want. And even if the creator to some people is just so, or it's too tropey, or it's too favorable to artificial intelligence for the people to get behind, at least the creator exists as an original work, again taking plenty of inspirations, but an original work that looks amazing despite not costing every dollar the studio had. We need to grab onto that and hope that leads us to more in the future. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think in general though, like the world building with this storytelling to me, even if just some of the character work might be a bit thin, the world building to me I thought was quite deep, and that was also why I got quite compelled. I mean, there's stuff with the spirituality that the AI characters have, and a lot of this is like passive storytelling you see in the background, or you see in parts of other scenes where that's not the main focus. When we see Alfie early on, Alfie's watching like cartoons, and these cartoons are portraying the Nomad, the big ship. So obviously these are cartoons made in New Asia about the current events. Like I felt like there was like a lot of depth to the world building, and probably more to get into if the movie had the time or the interest to maybe slow down a little bit. A lot of fun technology in this as a sci-fi story. A lot of stuff with I think the ability to briefly sync with a recently passed on human and like grab like a faint brief bit of consciousness from the deceased brain and put it into a synth and have a final interaction with that person. That was really compelling when that was done, as Joshua calls it, movie playing God. That was pretty sick. So yeah, that's the creator. I love the movie. I acknowledge the shortcomings it has, but I just think the good far outweighs the bad with this, and we really need to root for more movies like this to come out in the future. And I also think this will do a lot to get Gareth Edwards back into the mix. We're not going to wait another 7 years between Gareth Edwards movies. I'm very confident in that. So shout out the creator. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's probably going to make my top 10, in a few months. But let me know, how did you feel about the creator? What was your favorite part about it? Were you able to get over the shortcomings like me? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. That's going to do it for the pod this week. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Let me know how you're feeling. Next week, we have some big news. Of course, Ahsoka, the first season, has concluded. Loki, season 2, has begun. Lupin, season 3, the French heist series on Netflix, is back. New album from G-Idol, NCT 127, and some guy named Drake. And the new Julia Garner film from Kitty Green, The Royal Hotel. A lot of stuff I'm excited about. Can't wait to talk about it. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, hit the playlist, and I'll see you next week.